Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Jagged Alliance 3 releases today, and I have a feeling many of you are going to be curious about the stats for the different mercs. In this video, I'm going to walk through each option and give you my thoughts on how effective they would be in your playthrough. If you hear about mechanics you don't understand, there's a link in the description to my video covering all the perks where I cover that information in detail. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and who you plan to take on your first adventure. Before we actually get into walking through all the different mercs, I want to make sure that all of you all know that you can come into the website, click OK, and then you can either take a test or manually create your own custom merc. Something I did not realize when I released my impressions video tomorrow, so I apologize again about that. You don't get access to all of the great talents and traits that are available to a lot of the other mercs you'll see, but it allows you to get a much better stat distribution for your mercs, so it might still be worth your time. All right, let's start combing through all the mercs, starting in the recruit section, which technically is the bottom of the barrel, but as you'll see, just because a recruit is in the bottom section doesn't mean they are not the cream of the crop. We'll start with the first merc, Steroid. He specializes in mechanics, and looking at his stats, you'll see he makes a poor melee fighter since the low agility makes him move like a brick. His talent is Steroid Smash, and this is an unarmed attack that sends targets flying to damage objects, and its accuracy is based on strength. This is nice, but again, he moves so slowly that putting him in position to reach enemies is very difficult. His talent is Mr. Fix-It, and it provides a major bonus to disarm traps, hack devices, and pick locks. Also, unjamming weapons costs 1 action point. This trait is part of why you need a mechanic so much, because most of them will have this, and you'll use it pretty much constantly. That being said, I don't like Steroid, because even though he has a massive marksmanship stat, he doesn't have any traits that allow him to make the most of it, so I leave him on the bench. It should be noted, however, that he is absolutely hilarious and clearly a parody of Arnold Schwarzenegger. For that reason alone, it might be worth throwing him on the team. Next is Fox, a medic whose talent is striking looks, which makes enemies surprised instead of aware when she's the one who opens combat, and she retains the action points from her opening attack. Surprised enemies wait a turn before they become aware, but they have increased survival chance against stealth attacks. So basically, if she hits first, enemies are going to take a pause, letting another attack come in before they realize what is happening and mobilize. Her first trait is Scoundrel, and it makes her first weapon swap in her turn free, and provides additional conversation options. These options always persuade people to do something, so it's useful to have, but it's not the only way to convince someone. Weapon swaps only cost 1 action point, and frankly, I almost never switch weapons, so the first part of this trait doesn't particularly help me. Teaching allows for faster completion of the trained militia and training operations, along with giving 10% extra XP to the squad. You will need to train militia often so they can protect key areas without you having to backtrack, and training a secondary squad of mercs could be useful, so while this isn't a standout trait, it's nice to have. Ambidextrous reduces the accuracy penalty when dual-wielding firearms. You might hesitate on this since her marksmanship stat is mediocre, but keep in mind her massive dexterity score means she can use aim multiple times when shooting. Finally, she has Opportunistic Killer, which enables crits when using interrupt attacks, and she'll automatically reload if Overwatch was used in the last turn. So basically, altogether, Fox is an interesting mix, where technically she's a great stealth killer who can use double pistols to cover large areas and shoot an enemy that walks into them or tries to attack. She'll also quickly run over and bandage up any characters in need. Overall, I am not crazy impressed with her, but you need a medic, and she's the cheapest one that makes sense. Plus, she's another person who is highly entertaining to listen to. Most of her quips have some degree of sexual innuendo, and while oftentimes that can be annoying, I think it's been done right with her, especially if you have the right mercs paired with her. Next is Mouse, and she is an all-around character whose talent is light-footed, which allows her to ignore enemy Overwatch areas when moving. This is huge since enemies love to use Overwatch. She also gets stealthy, which makes her harder to spot by enemies when she's sneaking and gives her an increased chance to successfully execute a stealth kill. Trash. She has no strength, so she cannot be a melee character, and crappy marksmanship with no traits to make up for it. Skip her. Armorin is a marksman, and his talent is Eyes on the Back, which allows him to set Overwatch in a circular area instead of using a cone. could be useful in the right situation. He also has the auto weapons trait, which reduces the accuracy penalty when using burst fire or full auto. You will relatively quickly pick up weapons capable of using these modes, so this is definitely nice. Claustrophobic decreases morale when starting combat in underground sectors. Most of the combat scenarios I have seen are in open sections, so while this is a negative, I don't feel like it comes up a crazy amount of times. Spiritual gives them guaranteed minimal accuracy with hopeless attacks. You'll know you are attempting a hopeless attack because the character will say something along the lines of, "It would take a miracle to hit this," and usually it's because the enemy is way out of range or something of that sort. I don't like this talent because in those situations, most likely I'm going to move him into better positioning or use Overwatch, so this isn't particularly helpful. Finally, he has the distracting shot perk, which removes Overwatch and pin down actions while also not provoking interrupts. Fantastic perk. It's really nice having someone capable of this, as enemies love using those type of actions. Overall, I would say Ambrin is a decent option as your mid-range shooter. Even though he comes with a shotgun, you should get him an automatic weapon ASAP. Next is Livewire, a mechanic whose talent is Inside Dope, which reveals all enemies if you have intel for the sector. Fantastic talent to have. Knowing where the enemies are makes it significantly easier to place your team and ensure they cannot get the drop on you. We have already covered Scoundrel and Mr. Fix-It. Optimist gives you a small chance to prevent a team morale loss, which I don't think really matters because morale is easy to increase as long as you are consistently killing enemies. It should also be noted that Livewire has a unique PDA that gives her additional intel when hacking. Personally, I left Livewire on the bench because I don't like the idea of a mechanic who is good at hacking but sucks during combat. Kalina is a mechanic whose talent is Inevitable Strike, which is a ranged attack that bypasses damage reduction from armor. This is fantastic because it won't be long before you face a lot of enemies who consistently wear armor. She has the Night Ops trait, which reduces penalties to accuracy when at night and in underground sectors. You cannot control when these things happen, so personally that doesn't move me, and we have already talked about Optimus. I picked up Kalina because I need a mechanic, but wanted one who wouldn't be completely useless in combat. She was definitely a great shot, but keep in mind her mechanical skill is significantly lower than Livewire, and she failed hacks repeatedly. MD is a medic whose talent is Find My Feet, which allows him to become inspired and increases the team's morale during combat. Morale is easy to increase, and him being inspired isn't relevant because he's mediocre at dishing out damage. We have already talked about Teaching and Optimus. Zoophobic makes him lose morale when attacked by an animal, which is annoying but not the end of the world. I pick up Fox instead because she's pretty clearly way more useful than him in combat while still being a decent medic as well. Next is Igor, an all-around merc whose talent is Vash the Dorve, which lets him gain 25 grit and a large bonus to melee damage at the cost of reduced accuracy with ranged attacks. No question, this is fantastic and makes him a great melee damage dealer. His first trait is Stealthy, which we have already covered, and his perk is Full Body Contact, which lets him gain 15 grit upon a successful melee attack. This is a must-have perk for any melee build, so it's very useful that he comes with it. Overall, Igor is a great melee option, and the only reason I didn't use him is I decided to get one from a higher tier. Next is Grizzly, another all-rounder, and his talent is Off the Hip, which allows him to shoot machine guns with no accuracy penalty, even if they haven't been set up. For other mercs, machine guns need to be set before firing, otherwise you incur a heavy accuracy penalty. This sounds nice, but let's keep going. He has the Heavy Weapons trait, which allows attacks and setups with heavy weapons or machine guns to have a reduced action point cost. Technically, both of these are great, but the problem is it's some time before you regularly have machine gun ammo, and by then, you'll probably get a marksman from a higher tier. His last perk is for melee attacks, which he clearly isn't built for, so overall, I would say skip Grizzly. The last merc in this section is Barry, and his talent is Boutique Explosives, which produces 2 shaped charges every 168 hours, and he is able to craft those charges. Shaped charges can only be used without risk by Barry. They fire in a cone instead of a circle, and they are almost twice as powerful as the regular grenades that you'll usually get. On top of this, explosive devices are very effective, and if you equip shaped charges along with regular grenades, Barry can basically use explosives every fight. In my opinion, he has has the best talent in the entire game and is your best explosive specialist option. He has the Mr. Fix-It and spiritual traits, which we have already discussed, along with the Breach and Clear perk, which gives him a free move after throwing grenades or making shotgun attacks. Again, he should be throwing grenades all the time, so let him go crazy. He's the type of guy who explodes people in the name of Jesus, so if that commentary appeals to you, then his banter will be nice as well. Alright, finally we are ready to move it to the veteran section, starting with Fidel, another explosive specialist. He gets the double toss trait, which allows him to throw 2 grenades at the same time. This sounds great, and to some degree it is, but you need to have enough grenades to regularly make use of this, and I would say it's quite some time before you do. Psycho provides a melee attack that does more damage and gives you some additional dialogue options. Not bad, and his next trait is hand to hand, which lets him make an interrupt melee attack when an enemy in melee range attacks or tries to move away during their turn. So basically he has an attack of opportunity which most other melee specialists don't have, so again this is nice. He has the Shock Assault perk, which gives him 30% extra crit chance with melee weapons and firearms when attacking from within 4 squares. This is awesome, considering he clearly leans towards melee, and we have already covered Breach and Clear. So obviously he's a great explosives expert with some solid melee damage to boot, but I just didn't feel like there were enough grenades to go around where having 2 explosive experts made sense. Next is Raven, a markswoman whose talent is Top Spotter, which makes Overwatch apply mark to enemies in the Overwatch area. Very nice. This is awesome to have. We have already talked about all the weapons trait, and she also has the Deadeye perk, which grants an additional 5% crit chance per aim. Another great option to have for a markswoman, but there's an even better sharpshooter available here, so I didn't bother picking her up. Thor is a medic, and his talent is Nature's Bounty, which provides 1 herbal medicine every 48 hours. Herbal medicines can be consumed to provide grit, which is nice considering he's clearly meant to be a melee specialist. We have already covered the stealthy and spiritual traits, but he also has Stress Management perk, which makes him inspired after suffering a negative effect for the first time. This shouldn't be useful because you should be keeping your morale high and avoiding negative effects. The last perk is Savior, which makes Bandage restore 20% more health, and you get a free move when using Bandage. Fantastic perk that every medic should have. Thor is very expensive at the beginning of the game, so I chose Fox over him, but during the mid-game if you want an upgrade, he's not a bad option. Wolf is an all-rounder whose perk is Jack of all trades, and it makes operations that he undertakes complete approximately 33% faster. Combining this with training means he could probably train people faster than any other character, which is pretty cool. He also has the Beefed Up perk, which increases his health by 20%, and he has Distracting Shot, which we have already discussed. Overall, I find his build kind of bland, and so it doesn't appeal to me, but he has some interesting dialogue if you combine him with Fox. Ice is a marksman whose talent is Ice Storm, and this causes him to fire shots at enemies' legs, groin, torso, hands, and head, all in the same attack. Fantastic stuff, especially if you give him a full auto weapon. He'll absolutely tear enemies apart. He also gets the auto weapons trait, which we have already discussed, and it's perfect for him, and he gets lightning reactions, which allows him to automatically dodge the first successful enemy attack once per combat. This pumps up his survivability and is a great perk. Finally, he also gets Flanker, which provides an additional 15% damage against enemies who are flanked. This is very easy to set up if you have a melee damage dealer on your team, which you obviously should, so it's another great perk for him. Overall, Ice is one of my favorite marksmen, especially at the beginning of the game when money is tight. I spent a little extra to pick him up right from the start, and it really helped out my team. His commentary is ridiculous, thugnificent nonsense, but it's not cringe to the point it takes away from how great he is. Next is Blood, and the little icon tells you he's a marksman, but he's clearly meant to be a melee specialist. His talent is Flying Daggers, which allows him to throw knives at enemies while moving, which is obviously fantastic for stealth kills. These knives are a unique weapon on his character that cannot be moved. Keep in mind the knives are silent, gain increased accuracy from aim, and they will penetrate armor. He also gets the martial arts trait, which improves the accuracy of his melee attacks and his defense against enemy melee attacks. Fantastic stuff again. Throwing extends the range of all thrown weapons and reduces the action point cost for the first knife or grenade thrown each turn, which makes him even better with throwing knives. He already has Breach and Clear along with full body contact, both of which we have already discussed. Overall, he is an absolutely fantastic melee combatant, and I picked him up to be my stealth operative. Keep in mind, melee attacks are really the only thing he's good for, so depending on your setup, other options might make more sense. Next is Meltdown, an all-rounder, and her talent is Hard Feelings, which causes the last enemy to have attacked her to be marked by vengeance. When she attacks this target, she'll become inspired. This can be very effective if you make her a shotgun type of character who is getting hit and hitting often. We have already covered Psycho, heavy weapons, ambidextrous, beefed up, and recoil management. Overall, she doesn't impress me as much as Ice, but she's not a bad option. Next up is Buns, a markswoman whose talent is anything you can do, which gives her an accuracy bonus against targets hit by an ally this turn. Fantastic talent, as you can just always let her go last, as she'll choose to target somebody else has already damaged. She has the Negotiator trait, which reduces prices for operations and boat travel while giving you more conversation options. Money is a big deal in this game, and anything that makes your task cheaper is welcome. We have already covered Teaching and Distracting Shot. Overall, she's another decent markswoman option who doesn't quite compare to Ice. Last in this section is Grunty, another all-rounder whose talent is Überschwung, which causes him to attack the closest enemy with a firearm when combat starts, if possible, as long as he's not using a heavy weapon. Technically, this is decent to have, but his trait is heavy weapons, so it seems like this setup conflicts. He also has Vanguard, which provides grit when you are out of cover and or adjacent to an enemy, but his talent and trait are not geared towards melee characters. We have already covered Beefed Up. This guy doesn't know what he wants to be, and I would skip him. Alright, now we're in the elite section and we'll start with Ivan, a marksman whose talent is UC Igor, which provides 3 action points after each kill. Bananas! That alone makes him an absolute beast. He also has auto weapons, beefed up, flanker, and recoil management. It should be noted he has a unique headpiece which cannot be removed, provides 10% damage reduction, and most importantly, protects him from capitalism. Obviously, this dude is a monster, but you better make sure you can afford that weekly check. Vicky is a mechanic whose talent is elbow grease, and this allows her to repair weapons, armor, and items automatically over time. This is huge. You will constantly need to repair items, and this will help you do that a little bit less. She also deals an additional 7 damage with a bonus of 15% crit chance when using fully modified firearms. This is also awesome, but keep in mind it will be a while before you can fully modify your weapons. We have already covered throwing, ambidextrous, claustrophobic, flanker, and recoil management. Arterial shot removes the damage penalty you usually take for targeting arms and legs. Sometimes enemies have cover in a way where your best shots are against their arms or legs, so this is really nice to have. She also has a unique item that gives her a bonus when picking locks. Overall, Vicky is my favorite mechanic in the game, even though it's not really viable to pick her up right off the bat. She has a Jamaican accent and is very outspoken, causing her to have interesting banter with some of the other party members. Raider is a leader, and his talent is Tag Team, which provides bonus accuracy against enemies within the Overwatch area of an ally. Whether or not this is good depends on if you have someone on the team regularly using Overwatch. He has a Negotiator and Teaching traits, which we have already discussed. He also has the Revenge perk, which makes him interrupt enemies with a firearm attack if he takes significant damage while not in cover. Mediocre, but okay. Flanker we have already discussed. But he does have Hit the Deck, which lets him switch to prone for free, and he takes 20% less damage from explosives while prone. All of this feels mediocre considering he's an elite, and I would skip him. Tex is a marksman, and his talent is Dance for Me, which is a ranged attack that targets enemies' legs in a cone and applies Overwatch in the area afterwards. This is definitely nice to have. He also has CQC training, which gives him a major accuracy bonus when attacking enemies at short range, so great, we know how to use them. He also has ambidextrous, claustrophobic, Hit the Deck, and opportunistic killer. In addition, he has the Fast Runner perk, which gives him increased free move range when wearing light or no armor. Finally, he has a pair of unique 6-shooters that do more damage than most other pistols and cannot be removed. Overall, this dude is an absolute beast who can tear enemies apart. Your problem will be keeping him alive while in short distance from the enemy. Next is Nails, an explosive expert, and his talent is Nailed It, which gives him the Bloodthirst status after a kill, which causes him to deal more damage until the end of the battle. Doesn't say how much more damage, but let's just assume it's awesome. We have already reviewed Psycho, Hand to Hand, Claustrophobic, Shock Assault, and Recoil Management. The Linebreaker perk makes him inspired after a kill in a point-blank range, which is perfect. He also has a unique vest, which gives him a little bit of damage reduction and cannot be removed. Overall, he's clearly a fantastic melee option, although I would say he's mediocre as your explosive specialist. Dr. Q is a medic whose talent is Exploding Palm, an unarmed attack that makes enemies unconscious, which renders them prone and unable to attack. This is a fantastic melee attack. We have already talked about martial arts, night ops, and savior. Finally, he has the Hidden Run perk, which gives him a free move after making a melee attack, allowing him to be much more mobile. Dr. Q is my favorite medic in the game, and he has a Zen monk vibe that I enjoy listening to as well. He's not crazy expensive, so while it might not be affordable up front, it won't be long before you can seriously consider adding him to your team. Red is an explosives expert whose talent is Have At You, which, when activated, causes him to retaliate with a grenade when hit by an enemy during their turn. That sounds great, but he has a very low health rating, so honestly, you don't want him in a position to get hit regularly. We've already talked about Mr. Fix-It, Breach and Clear, Deadeye, and Arterial Shot. Pessimist gives him a small chance to prevent team morale gain. Again, I don't really care about the morale traits, so this doesn't bother me. But overall, while he has a fantastic explosives rating, he's not a better option than Barry. Keep in mind later in the game, you'll have even greater access to explosives, so it might make sense to have two of these specialists on the team. The last merc in this group is Hitman, a marksman whose talent is smarter, not harder, which gives him focus each turn. Focus allows him to deal more damage and gain grit at the end of the turn, as long as he doesn't move, change weapons, or reload. So basically, give him a rifle with a big clip, find a high vantage point, and never move him again. Great stuff. We have already reviewed Teaching, Hit the Deck, Arterial Shot, and Recoil Management. I think Ice is more consistently good, but Hitman has a higher ceiling for how effective he can be once you get a weapon in his hand that rarely needs to reload. Definitely not a bad option. Before we review Legendary Mercs, let me remind you that the channel has a free Discord available for you to join, and the link is in the description. If you enjoyed this video, I would also appreciate you hitting the like button. Really helps the channel out, and if you want to support this kind of content, please consider becoming a member of the channel, where you will get access to full playthrough episodes. Alright, so finally we have come to the legendary section. To get access to these mercs, you have to make an upfront donation for $20,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. Then you will still have to pay the mercs weekly fee, which is always more expensive than usual. The first is Gus, a leader with the Tango Down talent, which gives grit to everyone in the squad once per turn when he has killed an enemy. No question, this is absolutely fantastic and really helps your survivability. We have already reviewed Heavy Weapons, Beefed Up, Distracting Shot, Flanked, and Recoil Management. He also has the Loner trait, which makes him inspire when there are no allies in his vicinity at the start of his turn. It doesn't clarify what in his vicinity actually means, but point blank range is considered 4 squares, so I would say beyond that should trigger this effect, and it's very nice. Old Dog prevents him from increasing his stats naturally or from training operations, but it also grants 10% XP to the entire squad. So his stats are stagnant, but he'll help lift up the group. The Trick Shot perk applies negative statuses to enemies based on where you shoot them. This is a great way to neutralize tough foes. Reactive Fire has a chance to make an interrupt attack with firearms when an enemy attack misses you during the enemy's turn. The chance is based on the opposed dexterity check and will not trigger when you are taking cover. So let him run around in the open and use machine guns. Inspiring Strike increases morale when you deal more than 50 damage with an attack. It's not great, but it's not bad either. Finally, I think it should be noted he comes with full Kevlar gear and an M14 rifle. All in all, this guy is expensive as all hell, but no question, he's the best leader in the game and makes your entire party better. Magic is a mechanic with the second story man's talent, which gives an additional 50% crit chance with attacks from high ground. Bananas. Gaining high ground happens all the time, especially if you are able to sneak into the battlefield. Scoundrel, Stealthy, Vantage Point, and Fast Runner we have already discussed. The Lucky Streak perk makes him inspired when making 2 crits in the same turn, which you could do regularly with weapons that attack multiple times in the same turn. This is great to have. Untraceable slows down enemy detection, while sneaking and stealth kills that don't actually kill the target deal 20% more damage. So basically sneak in with this guy, get into a high spot, and let him kick off combat. On top of that, he has a fantastic mechanical stat, so this is great stuff, and magic is a fantastic option. Scully is a leader with a shoulder-to-shoulder talent, which is triggered when he ends his turn adjacent to an ally, giving both him and the ally 15 grit. Not as good as what Gus provides, but it's still nice. We have already covered hand-to-hand, Optimist, Vanguard, Beefed Up, and Deadeye. The whole position perk gives him a 45% damage reduction while using Overwatch or Pin Down. The amount of the percentage is based on his health. So basically he's meant to have a gun, but still be up close right in the action, just like a shotgun specialist. It should be noted that he comes with an AK-SU submachine gun, which has 3 mods already on it. Very nice. Reaper is a marksman and comes with the Grim Fate talent, which is a ranged attack that automatically crits, and when the attack kills an enemy, nearby enemies panic, causing them to run away and be unable to do any actions during their turn. Wicked! This is a fantastic ability. We have already covered Stealthy, Loner, Spiritual, Vantage Point, Flanker, and Arterial Shot. Total concentration makes his attacks deal 30% extra damage after a kill, but this ends if he misses or at the end of combat. Dire Warning is triggered when morale is high or very high and gives a 15% chance that enemies will panic. Panic enemies run away and will be unable to do any actions during their turn. In my opinion, Reaper is the best marksman in the game and the best character to use for sneak attacks. Great offense, and a fantastic debuffer that can shut down several enemies at one time. Sydney is a marksman, and his talent is Smug Operator, which gives him the Smug status at the start of combat. Smug provides increased maximum action points, and the effect is lost after taking damage or missing an attack. It doesn't say how much additional AP he gets, but regardless, missing or taking damage is going to happen often, so this doesn't impress me all that much. Potentially makes him great on the first turn, though. We have already covered Negotiator, Throwing, Reactive Fire, Breach and Clear, and Deadeye. Sharpshooter gives you 2 possible aims with your first attack each turn, and you'll deal 30% extra damage with your first attack each turn. The amount of extra damage is based on your marksmanship rating, so basically he's a top-heavy guy who's fantastic on the first turn, but his effectiveness whittles down after that. Personally, I would skip him. Shadow is a marksman with the Fleeting Shadow talent, granting him 10 grit upon successful stealth kills. Very nice, you can already tell what type of guy he is. We have already covered Stealthy, Loner, Lightning Reactions, Hidden Run, and Untraceable. The Ambusher perk increases your chance to connect with stealth kills, and enemies who survive your stealth kill are suppressed, which makes them have 4 fewer action points that turn, and they cannot flank your party. Cool stuff, and leads into what he's about. Still don't think he's as good as Reaper or frankly even Ice, but he's an interesting option. Scope is a markswoman with the Eagle Eye talent, which makes the pin down action cost 1 less AP, and it applies exposed on the target, which removes all their benefits from cover. Nice way to make enemies more vulnerable. We have already covered Night Ops, Vantage Point, Distracting Shot, Opportunistic Killer, and Fast Runner. Once again, I think Reaper and Ice are better options. Fada is an explosive expert with a heavy-duty talent, which grants 8 grit per enemy when hitting multiple enemies at once. It also improves the Ironclad perk, which provides half your move while wearing cumbersome armor. This talent upgrades that to a full move. This will also be triggered after packing up machine guns, which is necessary to do after they have been set up so you can move again. Overall, this is a fantastic talent that makes her more mobile and tanky as long as you are using the right weapons. We have already covered heavy weapons, Old Dog, Ironclad, Stress Management, Breach and Clear, Distracting Shot, Hit the Deck, Fast Runner, and Recoil Management. Overall, she's probably your best heavy weapon expert option, but personally, I prefer Ice and Reaper. And even though she's listed as an explosive expert, she's actually horrible in that role. The final Merc listed is Lin, a leader with the On My Lead talent, which allows all teammates to attack the selected target if they are in range and have a clear line of fire. Sick! This is a great way to focus fire on a difficult boss. We have already covered teaching, old dog, lightning reactions, stress management, dead eye, flanker, and arterial shot. Fire routine allows you to become inspired after you land 2 hits in Overwatch, which is nice if you're comfortable using Overwatch on a regular basis. His talent is nice, but for my money, Guess is still overall the better leader. And that is my full overview of all the Mercs in the game. Hope all of you found the information beneficial and enjoyed this video. Take care.